Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I hope I did Jonathan Nani justice. I'm Ron Luce. I'm here by myself, aka GM Ron, on this fine. Today is Wednesday. It is Wednesday. I don't know what day of the week it is anymore, but we're here because GM Ron has bones to pick. So for all of you that tuned into our latest show, just like my friend here in the comments, Mr. Skokes, you would have heard my gripe with the Washington Capitals and what that gripe was. For you didn't tune into our latest show yet. If you haven't, you can watch it either right here on the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button. You'll know when all of our shows go live. Or you can catch that wherever you listen to your favorite shows, as that is in podcast form as well. But we were talking about ruffling feathers. And my ruffles and feathers was the Washington Capitals bought CapFriendly. So for those that don't know what CapFriendly is, it's a website you can track. It has every team's cap situation laid out to a T. They have great resources. It's an awesome platform, has been for years. And it was originally called Cap Geek, and then it became CapFriendly after the original owner died, and the second guy took it and ran with it and further. And it's a good website if you've never heard of it. If you have heard of it, you know what I'm talking about. And there was a lot more said after the fact because the Capitals bought the platform and are turning it into their own personal database. Essentially, they're buying the technology is really what they're doing. So CapFriendly is going to go offline either right after the draft or right after free agency, depending on what reports you believe. Elliot Friedman believes it's after free agency. July 5th, I believe, is the target date right now. So that's where that stands. Bone picked, feathers ruffled, we're good there. But then Gary Bettman decided to kind of double down, it appears, based on comments that have now since made it out via Elliot Friedman, more or less, that the NHL never liked CapFriendly. And the reason for the disdain for CapFriendly was entirely related to a privy of information being available to fans. And mind you, CapFriendly is not the only website like this. Spotrac exists for every sport. You can look up contracts and things like that on Spotrac. And you can also do the same on Puckpedia. Puckpedia was a competitor established to compete directly with CapFriendly. So now the NHL is sitting here and is saying, well, we never liked CapFriendly. And it's like, well, what do you mean? So I have a couple quotes that are going to preface where this conversation is going here today, because the title of the episode today is The NHL Wants to Keep Fans in the Dark. And that's what I've gathered from all the information. That's what I've gathered from what has been said. And I have my own answer to it all. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. But again, I want to get to a couple of quotes noted specifically. These are from NHL Watcher. If you follow the account on X, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But just posts a lot of good, engaging hockey content, a great page, and a lot of quotes from podcasts and things like that will come and are easily available for fans on this page. But when the league discussed this is where things got really interesting. And according to NHL Watcher via Friedman on CapFriendly, he says the NHL frowns on the existence of sites like this one. Even though they should be doing it themselves, they consider it proprietary information. So the Capitals could keep it open if they wanted to. And this was directly in relation to what was said about CapFriendly. Now, if we backtrack on that here for a second and think about that. And there's a great article here that Bruce Arthur shared from the Star. And he's 100% right. just I haven't even read the article yet. I am going to give it a read as soon as we're done here because he's spot on. He says the NHL is a small town with little vision, and enabling the death of CapFriendly is just another example. And it is. And I've said this for years. I've said this here on Four Feathers. I've said this in private conversations with friends and family. I've even just general people that I've spoken to, even other shows like SM Mornings with, Sean Sierra. I've mentioned this in other places before, and I truly fully believe it. of any league that exists in what we would deem the big four of professional sports, at least in America, right? Obviously, soccer is the largest sport in the world. But in the US, it's four leagues that dominate as the biggest. It's the NFL, obviously, the NBA, obviously, Major League Baseball, and the NHL. The NHL, by far, of any of those leagues, is the biggest boys' club that exists. And what do I mean by boys' club? I mean, it is the biggest collection of old thinking people. We'll just say people, just to be nice, but you knew where I was going with that. Old heads who think everything should be run the exact same way it was in the 1970s and the 1960s. And they always help their buddies, right? You see it with the more than any in the NHL where coaches are just recycled, right? Like Lindy Ruff keeps getting new jobs. Alain Vigneault was that way for a while. Remember Todd McClellan's little run there? And he even got that with guys now. John Tortorella is a perfect example of that. It has always been a boys' club. And it's, oh, well, we got to help our guys and our own, and they want to keep everything real tight to the vest. But the NHL fails to realize that that is detrimental to their product moving forward. And with these latest, we'll call them accusations, quotes, whatever the hell you want to call it, the NHL is ostracizing its fan base because they're saying, well, you don't need to know this information. Why not? Why can't we know this information? It's publicly disclosed. Every NHL insider tweets everything or posts everything about contracts once they're signed. This is just a consolidated form of doing it. And there's some interesting sidebar to this that I do want to briefly explore here, because the NHL believes that they should not be in the business of publishing this stuff. As a matter of fact, I've been told several times that the relationship between the NHL and CapFriendly was icy. And that was from Elliot Friedman. But he also went on and noted some stuff about how there's teams scrambling. These are the quotes. There are some teams scrambling today, no question about it. There are a couple of people who have said to me there will be some teams that don't have this kind of infrastructure that will be like, quote, oh no, we're in trouble. Continued. The league would say you cannot be partnered to this and have it be public, and also wouldn't make any money from it on ads. So once the Capitals purchased it, it was coming down. And this was in relation, again, to CapFriendly. How in the hell, and this is another example of why NHL teams, there are some out there that are still run like it's the 1970s. Because this is nothing groundbreaking. And this is not a shot at CapFriendly. I love CapFriendly. CapFriendly took its database to another level, and I think that's part of the reason it got bought. And I want to touch on that here in a minute. But the fact that there's NHL teams out there that don't have a database of NHL salaries and a buyout calculator in 2024 is embarrassing. It is absolutely embarrassing. How in the world do you, as a professional franchise that almost every year any given franchise pays what, about $82 million in player salaries? It'll be 88 next year potentially because of the cap going up. Can you sit here and go, we don't have a method of tracking and understanding who's available? That's bonkers to me. You know what's even more bonkers? Here's the list of teams that have internal databases similar or would rival that of CapFriendly. Seattle, New Jersey, Carolina, the Blackhawks. Good job, Kyle Davidson. The Islanders, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't have anything until Kyle Dubas got there. So incredibly recent, right? Within the last season now of Kyle Dubas being named the GM. And Skoke says it here in the comments. That's unbelievable. And that is just bad business. It's not my fault if a team doesn't have this. And good on the Capitals, because they just gave themselves and every other team that already had an internal database a leg up on some of these other teams that are not going to have that. And they're going to be scrambling, and I'm sure everybody's going to end up building one, and somebody's going to get contracted out to build these for these teams. But the fact that they don't have that already is ludicrous. And it just continues to show that the NHL is light years behind other sports in every facet when it comes to just technologies that these teams use, when it comes to what CapFriendly started to design and establish player ratings. CapFriendly effectively started taking numbers like the NHL rosters in NHL 25 are and saying this player has this value. And I'll provide an example of that. We're going to pull up CapFriendly right now on the fly, and we're going to do this. Of course, we're going to go to the Blackhawks because where else would I go? It'd be no fun if I went anywhere else. Go away. For example, Connor Bedard. We'll use him as the example. Connor Bedard has an 88 FP is his grade that's attached to his player profile on CapFriendly. What that means he grades out as an 88 overall when he's getting all equal counterparts, including turns of talent level. So if you think about it in the sense of like a video game, he'd be rated an 88 overall. And he's an FP, which designates he's either an elite or a franchise player, which is 100% true. We all know Connor Bedard's the franchise player of the Chicago Blackhawks. Once that came to CapFriendly, and it's very recent. I think it was the end of last season that these numbers and these grades started to pop up as a part of the CapFriendly platform. I think it was at that point that other teams around the league that didn't have technology like this were like, oh shit, maybe it is worth investing in CapFriendly, even though we take them down to help ourselves. And that's what the Washington Capitals did here. But now I want to take this back into the face of Gary Bettman. Because I know there's people out there that'll say, well, but Ron, the NHL has grown under Gary Bettman's tutelage. Yes, it has. That is absolute fact. Cap dollars have gone up every year. Teams are valued now more than they ever were before. There's been 2 expansion teams in the last 5 years. A little over 5 years now, I guess. It's hard to believe that it's been that long for the Golden Knights already. And there was many more other expansion teams underneath his tutelage as well, right? Minnesota, hockey returned to Minnesota after leaving to go to Dallas years before. Columbus got a hockey team, and those were 2 of the more recent, expansion franchises. But he fails to understand what it takes to grow the product in today's generation. And in a world where information is more available than it ever has been in human history, why are you still trying to sit here and sabotage and take that away and claim that, this is privy information? No, it's not. These insiders get these contract details within minutes of these signings. And you're going to sit here and tell the common NHL fan that they don't need to know this? It's ridiculous. It's bullshit. Sure, maybe not every fan is going to live on CapFriendly, and that's fine. I understand that there's fans that are not going to do that. But there are fans like myself who I frequent the website on a daily basis because there was nothing like it for any other sport. CapFriendly was very unique to what it brings to the NHL. And I'm fully believing that their sister site, Salary Swish, I believe will continue to operate. I would hope it continues to operate because the NBA clearly doesn't care. The NBA says, no, this is good because people get intrigued by the numbers. People get excited about big dollars being exchanged in NBA free agency. And it's the same way in NHL free agency. Hell, I'm glued to my phone on the 1st of July every single year. Because it's what gets people excited. It's a big reason why Major League Baseball right now gets absolutely torn down because of how horrible their free agency process is, because it's dragged out over 4 months. Hell, within the first 4 hours, there's probably 25 to 30 signings in the NHL and the NBA. The NFL is the same way. We see it in March every single year. People get excited about that because it's change for your team. It's understanding what your team can and can't do. And if Gary Bettman's sitting here going, well, the casual fan shouldn't be able to criticize a GM and what he's doing, why the hell not? The fans putting their butts in seats is the entire reason that these franchises are able to operate and exist. If it's not for the common fan buying a ticket to the game and maybe just wanting to have an opinion on their team, it's not like the GM needs to listen to the fan base, but at least have an opinion on what's going on. So Gary Bettman is effectively calling NHL fans stupid, and they don't need to know this information. When every single other sport has no problem with websites like Spotrac publishing this information. It's mind-blowing to me. It really is. And it's another notch in the belt for far from good reasons of why the NHL is consistently now falling behind all of these other leagues. And we're seeing it. This is exactly what it is. It's shit like this where the NHL effectively says our fans don't need to be, in the loop. Our fans don't need to have visibility into what happens on the business front and dollars and things like that. Why? We live in the age of technology sharing and information being readily available at your fingertips. People crave that kind of information. People enjoy it. And it's healthy for the fan base. Have you ever gotten in one of those CapFriendly armchair GM comment sections? There's a lot of debate back and forth in those. But guess what? That keeps the love for the sport alive. That keeps you, Gary Bettman, employed because there's a league that people actually give a shit about. And instead, no. Fans don't need to know this information. Fans actually should be left in the dark, is what I gather from what Gary Bettman is saying. So guess what, Gary? You can feel that way. But then you're going to have more of these. And I know that the guys over at CHGO Blackhawks just had a show today on this very topic. Ironically, I had this in the wheelhouse for last night and never was able to jump on the mic like I wanted to. But it just shows that we're not the only people at Four Feathers that feel this way. There's others just in Chicago talking about it. You don't think this is not a conversation topic within every single fan base in the NHL? And now you have more of them, Gary, because you added 2 expansion franchises and you have 32 teams now that you got to sit here and worry about. It's done. It flat out is done. And fans are still going to continue to get this information. And I'll tell you what, I think any fan that has utilized CapFriendly over the last however many years is probably a smarter hockey fan because of it, because they understand the inner workings of how, restricted free agency works and how, an offer sheet works and how, the cap, inflates and why the cap inflates and things like that. Wouldn't you want, especially in a year where you have record increase, especially over the last probably 10 years, right? I remember when the cap went up maybe $7-8 million in like a 10-year span almost. Like I remember when we were still talking about the cap being $75 million a year for these teams. And that was in the early parts of the Blackhawks Stanley Cup run. It was largely stuck around that $82 million mark for the last few years, largely because of COVID. There's finally been one major jump in the cap now to $88 million for this upcoming season. That's going to excite fans because they want to know what their teams can spend. And for Gary Bettman to sit back and essentially say good on the Capitals for taking this technology and this information off the market is the complete opposite of what Gary Bettman should be doing. In, again, the day and age where information is shared so quickly that people are going to find out the information they want to or not. But in fact, it's the websites like CapFriendly and Puckpedia and Spotrac that get the people that enjoy the numbers aspect of it into it more. It's not just watching the product on the ice. It's understanding what the value is deemed by those teams for those players and seeing how they can structure things so fans can form opinions. And it leads to a lot of really great storytelling. If you've read any article that I've put out in terms of a hypothetical situation, a possibility that the Blackhawks could do, a lot of that inspiration is supplemented by websites like CapFriendly, because I will live on that website and I will play through different scenarios and see how it shakes out. And yet the NHL wants to get rid of it. And it's tragic, really. And it's kind of infuriating, I think, as a fan. Because I feel like I'm being told that, why do you need to know this information? Gary, I have an accounting degree. I can promise you I can follow numbers and understand where money comes from. That's not a problem, pub. But for you to, again, ostracize your fan base as the only sport in the league that is upset about this, or at least publicly, it's one thing to be upset about it behind closed doors. It's another thing to be upset about it in the face of the public eye. To me, that's only going to potentially hurt them in the long run. And it's another thing that fans like myself and other fans continue to say, why is Gary Bettman still the commissioner of this league? Why does Gary Bettman not understand that bringing this game further into the age of technology is good for the game? Look at the NBA. Look at the NFL. They know how to market. And a lot of that marketing is through a lot of things that are external. Notice how the NHL really doesn't have a lot of that. And a lot of that's likely due to one Gary Bettman. One last final quote here, and this comes from one of my favorite personalities in hockey to follow, and it's Steve Dangle. Been following Steve Dangle for a lot of years now, and he really sums up kind of my feelings. I think a lot of the feelings of a lot of other people really, really well. He says he listened to Freege's report about the NHL being icy with CapFriendly and not wanting salary information to be public. They should release this info themselves, and they don't. Correct. Once again, this is the NHL telling its most passionate fans to shut up and eat their slop. And that's 100% true. It's saying, hey, you're going to like this product whether you agree with it or not, and you're just going to take it. And that's horrible for keeping your fan base happy. Again, you're worried about the players' salaries being public. What happens when those salaries can't be paid anymore because you ostracize your fan base? And again, I understand this is a small thing. This isn't going to destroy the game of hockey by any means. But if these type of acts, and this is how the NHL front office feels, that very well can come back and slap him in the face. And when the game of hockey doesn't grow at the pace that Gary Bettman envisioned, he has nobody to sit there and blame but himself. And that's exactly what this feels like. So incredibly well summed up by Steve Dangle. I think he put it perfectly. It's telling the league's biggest fans to just sit down and be quiet. And that's pretty fucking garbage, if you ask me. And I'm upset. That legitimately fires me up. It's the whole reason I wanted to jump on here today and just vent. Is because, again, you're telling the fans like myself who will commit a ton of time to looking into this type of stuff and formulating ideas and theories and promoting that to others within the fan bases of these teams alive to build the fan base, build the amount of content that can be absorbed by your fans because they can't get enough of it. And yet you want to take it away from them. It's pretty garbage. So as a final declaration, I tell Gary Bettman, better be careful. Because again, this is a small thing on the grand scheme of, the NHL and how it operates and how it manages its relationship with the fan base and every respective team's fan base for that. But if this is the attitude toward the fans and your keep everything close to the vest boys club attitude persists further into the 2020s when it should have died in the 1990s, That's only going to hurt the game of hockey. You're only going to hurt the fan base that keeps Gary Bettman employed, that keeps these teams running. You just had to move a team because people would not go to games because they could never get it right in Arizona. So you moved a team to Utah. What happens when that happens within more fan bases? Because, again, this is just one example of it all. But it's very clear that Gary Bettman only values his own opinions in his head and how he believes things should be run and not what the fans want. And that's where I take issue with all of this. Rest in peace, CapFriendly. It's been a run. We'll get one last hurrah before it's shut down for good. NHL free agency is on the horizon. Something to be very excited about. Something I'm personally very excited about. Got an NHL player profile in the works right now. Actually, might go out this evening yet. For those that have joined here for the live stream. The draft coming up for the Blackhawks. I'm going to share one thought, a build off of our last show when it comes to the draft. Little nugget here at the end. I think Lev Shinov is going to be a Blackhawk. And I kind of thought it from the start. And I think even more so, Tony brought up a great point on our show this week that with everything happening globally outside of the world of hockey, a Russian player might be hard to get over to the United States right now, given everything that's been going on, because the governments and things like that will absolutely get involved because it's still a business at the end of the day, right? I think that's going to scare some teams away from Demidov to the point that Demidov could slip, and you're seeing it in anybody that posts content about the NHL draft. The fear of Demidov slipping is real. People think he could slip in the top 10. I think he still goes in the top 10. Somebody's going to take a calculated risk on it regardless. But I think there was a world where Kyle Davidson looks at what the team doesn't have and an increased salary cap, which is only going to benefit them when they have to sign Connor Bedard. Maybe they do make a play on a couple of these free agents on the offensive side this free agency window. And then they go ahead and upgrade on defense and get that big right-handed shot that they don't have right now. And from a youth standpoint, obviously Seth Jones is that player right now. But Lev Shinov could be your guy in the future to pair with the likes of Vlasic and Korchinski down the road. So I think that's something interesting to keep an eye on. I've seen a lot of people being like, I'm a Lev Shinov guy now and this, that, and the other. I don't want to say that I've said it from the beginning, but I've said it from the beginning that I think there's a world where Lev Shinov is the Blackhawks choice at number 2. I think that's becoming more and more believable. And he's good. He's a good player. If you haven't watched his film yet, go watch some highlights. The dude can move. He skates well. He's big. Brings a lot to the table that, again, the Blackhawks could absolutely use to improve as a team. Before I sign off, I want to remind everybody, Four Feathers Podcast, your official Blackhawks coverage of the On Tap Sports Network. Do be sure to check us out at Four Feathers Pod on the socials, at On Tap Sportsnet as well. Go check out all of our other teams as well. Baseball season's rough out here, folks. Cubbies on tap, Sox on tap on the socials. The Cubs and Sox on tap boys have been going through it. Bears on tap. We were just live yesterday, as a matter of fact. Go check that out. Quentin and I did a show on the defensive line as we get ready for training camp to start in July. And the Bulls. Bulls got a big offseason coming up too. We sit here talking about the Blackhawks and how important their offseason is going to be. Bulls is equally important in the city of Chicago and what they need to figure out in this coming free agent window and draft window. OnTapSportsNet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on the socials, the OnTap Sports Network. We're going to check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. I am Ron Luce. This was fun. I am GM Ron. Plenty of GM Ron content coming here over the next month plus as the Blackhawks start to get ready for the 2024-25 NHL season. And hopefully Kyle Davidson is busy in the coming weeks. I'm going to get out of here just as we always do. Let's go Hawks.